First, I would like to thank the organizers of the conference for the possibility of being here today and talking with you. I will speak about workers' fundamental rights in the age of digitalization. And this is such an extensive subject that I will focus on the geolocation of the workers during the performance of his work activity. Location can provide a great deal of information about a person to the point of being able of identify him, her, and reveal very intimate areas, particularly sensitive data. Many details are transmitted by our mobile phones and smartphones of his, her private life. In the case of employee geolocation, a series of guarantees has been established so that corporate control is subject to certain limits. The first point is the point of the United Nations. So the perspective of the United Nations is that the right to respect for privacy is closely linked to the right to the protection of personal data. Personal data is a modern right, a new concept of privacy, and is very important in Europe. So since both of them, privacy and personal data, aim to protect similar values, such as the autonomy and dignity of natural persons by granting them a personal sphere in which to freely develop their personality, think and formulate their own opinions. In the employment context, the United Nations note that a wide range of employers are increasingly demanding that workers be tracked and managed using data-driven technologies, including artificial intelligence systems, so-called human resources analytics, aims to provide more effective and objective information about employees, which can include automated decision-making for hiring, promoting, or firing workers. While most of these technologies focus on job monitoring, AI systems are also extending to non-work related behaviors and data. These trends has accelerated with the COVID-19 pandemic, where the number of processes carried out digitally has increased with teleworking, and workplace monitoring system has been introduced into workers' homes with enormous risk for privacy. For all these reasons, the United Nations set out the need for a human approach for a people-centered digital transformation in the report of the future of work on the occasion of the ILO centenary. In that report, it called for the use of technology as a tool in the service of decent work. Technology, and specifically artificial intelligence, must be under human control, meaning that final decisions affecting work should not be made by algorithms, by human beings, avoiding the alienation of workers. As the report stresses, the worker is a subject of rights, and the worker's dignity must be preserved, so he or she cannot be subject to indiscriminate controls through sensors and other devices. In addition, their privacy must be protected against the use of data generated by new technologies. Now I will focus in the context of the European Union, but first I will analyze the recommendation 2015 of the Council of Europe on the processing of personal data in the employment context. As for information system as technologies for employee monitoring, including video surveillance, they should be subject, says the recommendation, to a number of guarantees, in particular the consultation of workers' representatives. Regarding equipment that reveals the location of employees, it should only be introduced if it's necessary to achieve the legitimate purpose pursued by employers, without entailing continuous monitoring of employees. Because of the potential to violate the rights and freedoms of individuals affected by the use of these devices, employers must ensure employees' rights to privacy and protection of personal data, including additional guarantees. Such guarantees provided in Principle 21 consist on informing employees in advance, taking appropriate internal measures related to the processing of such data, and consulting employee representatives, as well as the National Supervisory Authority on the processing of personal data in accordance with national law or practice. In the European Union, which adopted the General Data Protection Regulation in April 2016, whose fully entry into force took place in May of 2018, to protect fundamental rights in the digital age. This regulation is directly applicable in the European Union law and does not require national transposition, and establish for the entire European Union a single current set of data protection rules. For the purpose of the European Union regulation, the location of a person is considered as one of the personal data. This right must be limited, as it's not an absolute right, and if necessary to achieve objectives of general interest or to protect the rights and freedoms of others. In the European Convention of Human Rights, unlike the European Union law, does not consider the protection of personal data as a specific fundamental right, but as part of the rights protected by the right to respect for private life. In the employment sphere, transparency of processing is covered by Article 88 of the General Data Protection Regulation, which provides for appropriate and specific measures to safeguard the human dignity of data subjects, as well as their legitimate interests and fundamental rights, with particular emphasis on monitoring system in the workplace. In particular, it states that member states may, by means of legislation or collective agreements, lay down more specific rules to ensure the protection of the rights and freedoms with regard to the processing of workers' personal data in the employment context. In particular, for the purpose of recruitment, performance of the employment contract, and equality, diversity in the workplace, health and safety, and also in the termination of the employment relationship. In this context, the validity of consent in the processing of employee data has been questioned, which can sometimes be doubtful given the economic imbalance of employees vis-a-vis employers. The European Commission has highlighted, in the face of the incredible availability of new data and digital technologies, the growing risk for the violation of privacy and personal data security. It has also highlighted the danger of mass surveillance, algorithmic biases with discriminatory effects, and even open censorship. All this can endanger our democracy values, our security, or even the foundation of our societies, as it affects the core of fundamental rights. How is regulated in the European Union? We have different regulations, but well, the Austrian labor law provides, with regard to company restriction on employee monitoring, for determination with the legal representation of the employees. So if you want to implement temporary control, for example, in the email or GPS, you have to consult the representation of the employees, or in the absence, by individual agreement, if it can't affect the human dignity of the workers. As in Austria, German labor law stipulates that the introduction of employee monitoring system is subject to the approval of the Works Council, as in the case with GPS tracking. Also in France, the employer has to inform and consult the Social and Economic Committee. An employer may not collect information of an employee by means of a device of which he has not informed him beforehand. In Italy, remote control devices may only be used exclusively for organizational and productive needs, for safety and work, and for the protection of company assets. Their use must be subject to the provision of a collective agreement stipulated with the workers' representatives. In the absence of an agreement, this control system and tools may be installed with authorization of the labor authorities. Finally, in Spain, we have regulated the privacy in our Spanish constitution, but also in the workers' statute, which emphasizes that the employer, in the adoption of an application of surveillance and control measures to verify compliance by the worker with his labor duties, must take into account the consideration due to his dignity. And also in relation to the digital environment and to disconnection. It has been also regulated in the Law of Data Protection of 2018. The tension between the right to privacy and the company's power of surveillance and control of labor services in the context of new technologies has been interpreted by the courts. Specifically, the Constitutional Court said in 2000 that the need to carry out a proportionality test in implementation of corporate control measures of the Article 20 of the Workers' Statute. Also, the Spanish Data Protection Agency says that the data collected should be used for a specific purpose, but not for continuous monitoring of workers. In addition, it says that an obligation cannot be imposed on the worker to provide his personal means, for example, his smartphone, to facilitate geolocation. It has been very complicated in the case of the riders. So finally, the location of a person or geolocation in the case of workers can reveal a lot of information and affect people's privacy with all the risks that this entails. The right to is protected by the right to respect for privacy life in the first instance, and the right to data protection as a more modern right, elevated to the status of a specific fundamental right in the European Union level. The protection of both rights is important, since at stake are the autonomy and dignity of individuals, which must be respected. International organizations have established certain duties, such as the duty to inform and consult workers' representatives, and to observe the principle of proportionality in the establishment of control measures. In short, it's a matter of preserving our rights and avoiding this kind of permanent digital surveillance in an Orwellian sense, which in the workplace could even lead to forms of psychological harassment and directly affects our freedoms and democratic values. So thank you very much.